Oh! Did that hit the bottom? It did not hit the ground. Holy okay. Hello, I'm that James guy, and today we are replacing the coolant on my 2020 Chevy Bolt. We're just whipping over to Lordco right now. We're gonna grab some Dextron coolant. It is a General Motors product. We do need Dextron. It's just a quick whip around the corner. So EV maintenance. I've spoken about EV maintenance before. Put a card up here and a link down below. We talked about rotating tires. That's basically mostly what you have to do on an EV for maintenance, especially a two-wheel drive or front-wheel drive EV, where all of the braking and acceleration loads, most of them anyway, are on one axle. So that axle, the tires tend to wear out real fast. And so they have to be rotated about as often as you do an oil change on a internal combustion engine or a gasoline powered car. But anyway, one of the things on the Chevy Bolt, I assume every EV, we have coolant being used all over this thing. There's 3 separate coolant loops. I'll explain those in great detail in just a little bit here, but the coolant has to be replaced every 240,000 kilometers, 150,000 miles, or 5 years. And this is a 2020 car, went into service, according to the Carfax, January 2020. So it's been 5 years. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna change that coolant. We're gonna use, we're also doing a product review on an OEM Tools vacuum coolant filler. You gotta use one of those when you're doing an EV. You should use one of those anytime you fill a cooling system, but I bought one of those specific for this little challenge we have ahead of us. Park the car. Hopefully they have some GM, Dextron, OK coolant for this kind of thing. Does it really matter? I don't know. Cooling systems are used quite extensively on these cars. I'm going to go over them right now. The owner's manual actually explains this pretty darn good, these cooling systems on here. So you can see here we have the little under hood diagram. Number 2 is our cabin heating coolant. That the explanation here is cabin heating is maintained by coolant heated by the coolant heater control module. Separate from the power electronics and battery coolant loops, this module heats the coolant based on temperature inputs from the cabin climate control system. And then you have number 3, which is for your battery, your high voltage battery. During vehicle operation and also during charging, the high voltage battery cells in the vehicle are kept within a normal operating temperature range. The temperature rises above this temperature, the battery cooling system turns on the air conditioning compressor and cools the coolant until the correct temperature is reached. If the temperature falls below this temperature, a high voltage heater located outside the battery on a cradle heats the coolant until the correct temperature is reached. And then finally, we got number 7, the single power inverter module, the accessory power module, and charger module. It just basically keeps the power electronics, high voltage stuff at a proper temperature. The SPIM, APM, and charger module are cooled using a separate coolant loop. These modules are kept below a maximum temperature. If the temperature rises above this temperature, the electric cooling fan will turn on to cool the coolant. So there you have it. 3 cooling loops. Most newer EVs only have 2. They do not use coolant to heat the cabin. They would have a heat pump. So they'll use the existing AC compressor, just use it as a heat pump, which is way more efficient than what this car does. It's like a giant steam kettle. Anyway, gonna run and get some coolant. See you back at the garage. Drove it up on the ramps and I put it on blocks at the back. You can see there, no jack stands required. It's basically on flat ground. You want this thing on flat ground so that when you go to drain all the coolant, most of it comes out. We're going to be trying to undo the pipes, hoses in the lowest parts so that the most drains out. But I think we're going to actually grab the shop vac and try and suck out as much residual coolant as we can out of here. First things first, we are going to disconnect the negative of the battery. So hey, may as well do that right now. Get the negative of the actual 12-volt battery disconnected so that nothing can, I don't know, turn on, cause something crazy to happen. So that's that. That's always the first step whenever you're doing something like this on an EV. Here's our 3 coolant reservoirs. They do kind of have a funky, I don't know, like a tamper-proof thing. So when you turn them, nothing really happens. But all you gotta do is, if you look at that little slot there, it lines up right there. And you can see you just stick a screwdriver in there and then you can actually wind it up. So it's kind of tamper-proof so that the ordinary person is like, who doesn't own a flat screwdriver, can't just open them, right? Which one to start with? I think we're gonna start with the most difficult one. That's probably the battery pack. Let's start with that one. I'm gonna there's a huge under tray on this car. So first things first, we're gonna just quickly whip that off. There's like a zillion screws. And then after that's off, then we can pull hoses and see what drains out. All right, let's go into the car and I'll show you a few things. Now that we can actually see in there, I can kind of show you all these different coolant loops and kind of where they go. So real quick, under the car. So here's the front of the car. As we come in, you can see here, there's 2 coolant lines. It even says in, I don't know if you can see that, in and out. That is the main motor. So there is a heat exchanger in there where the not hydraulic, but the actual transmission oil that the rotor for the electric motor runs in. It's a heat exchanger, and so you get coolant coming in here from the power electronics, like the main inverter. From there, it comes out and it goes into the, where does it go? Into the surge tank where it holds the coolant. And you can see right beside it, that right there is the actual coolant pump. See, there's the wire for it. That's the actual coolant pump, the electric coolant pump that pumps coolant through here basically all the time when you're driving, and it just keeps things under control. Now, there's another coolant pump right here. That is a coolant pump. That is for the battery pack. You actually look, well, I'll show you from the top. It actually comes in, so right here, here's the coolant line, surge tank coolant line right here. And there's actually a chiller here. So it actually uses the AC lines. The AC, cools off that little heat exchanger, and it actually chills the coolant for the batteries if they get too hot. But it can also heat them up. There's another heater underneath. That goes down to that coolant pump I just showed you. If you go all the way back to the batteries, see here's our main battery disconnect for our high voltage. Electrical connectors going in there. But right over here is our coolant lines for our battery pack. And right here, right before it, this little box right here with the high voltage lines in them, that's the actual heater for the coolant. Like in cold weather, when it wants the batteries to be a certain temperature, it'll use that heat and it will heat the coolant going in. So you got AC cooling it down, or you got heating it up. So this is where I'm going to disconnect those lines, and we'll see how much coolant comes out of this thing. Oh, another thing you got to know. These hose clamps, like right here, they are actually glued to the hoses. You cannot remove them. So don't try and take them off ever. There's an out and an in. Doesn't really matter which one we do here. I think we'll just try and get the one with the lowest. Well, they're both about the same height, so we'll drain this into a bucket. I've got special pliers for these clamps, and we'll see what comes out. Here's our reservoir, and well, let's slowly, I'm working one-handed here. Oh, did that hit the bottom? It did not hit the ground, but okay. We're creating some airspace. You can hear it change. Do I dare do any more? All right, well folks, that's the battery drained. Well, it seems to be finished. So what I'll do is I'll take the shop vac. How much coolant do I actually have in here? Not that much. So we still have some residual coolant caught in this thing. I think we'll get the shop vac on here and we'll kind of suck more coolant out of this thing. Definitely not 7 liters going on here. All right, I poured everything from the vacuum cleaner into this pail. This is 2 US gallons, so like maybe 7.5 liters to the top. I don't know, maybe we didn't get all of it. We got most of it. That's good enough. All right, let's put that hose back on now. Just gonna get this pipe back on. I'm just going in from behind the front passenger side tire. That pops on. I forgot to hit record when I took this apart, so Basically, I used this hose pick to free this hose up from this fitting. This is a disconnect, so I think you could probably just, there's probably an O-ring seal in here. You can just pull it out without having to do this hose clamp thing. Just in case that O-ring is in rough shape, you don't want to damage it. Fancy spring clamp tool is one of the best inventions in the history of tools. The other thing you gotta want to do is make sure that your spring clamp goes in the exact same spot as where it was so that it clamps evenly everywhere. That is that. Time to vacuum this thing down. All right, this is our new Air Vac coolant refiller. It is a vacuum filler from Amazon, and here's what it came with. Some pipes and some goodies, different spigots for the actual mouth of the filler. And unfortunately, my compressor is really crappy, so this may take a while. OEM Tools 2 quadruple four Amazon purchase, OEMtools.com. All right, here we go, all set up. Here's our air line from our crappy compressor, so this could be painful. And it goes in here. This is the venturi that creates the vacuum from the rushing air from the compressor running through. And then we start building a vacuum. This is the suction hose that will eventually go into our coolant jug or coolant container. We don't need that quite yet. It's closed. We got open. So all we need to do is open this and we should start pulling a vacuum. And my compressor, I have this worst feeling. It's horrible. So let's just see what happens here. You saw me struggling immensely trying to get this thing to even work. You can see here, there's the gauge. We're sitting just past 25 inches of vacuum. That was the key right there. I couldn't make that throat of that filler neck seal with the rubber, even after I tried a couple different ones. That overflow, I put the cap on that actually came with the tool. It had a cap where that fitting had to go on. So I just used that little cap. I'm gonna stick that in the tool box, the box that the tool came in. Anyway, we're stuck on 25. What we're gonna do here is fill a couple jugs into a clean pail, and we're gonna suck this out of a pail. And just keep this pail full, and we'll just continue to suck coolant in it. There's a nice little screen on the suction pipe too. I like that. Got another jug ready to go. This battery coolant circuit should be able to take almost 2 jugs, I would think. So we'll see what happens here when we open this up. We don't wanna suck any air. There's gonna be a little bit of air at the beginning, but whoa, that's insane. And we'll just keep an eye on the level. It is certainly sucking coolant in. Slow down a bit. You can see the level going down here. So far, OEM Tools, man. This looks real good. See what happens if I stop it. The level is dropping still. There's a sight mark on the side of it, a high mark and a low mark. We still have a lot of vacuum in there. Certainly don't want to overfill it because that would be super annoying to adjust. Just looking at the sights on the side where the level should be. Need to add more. This tool feels really quality too. So our vacuum's dropping pretty quick now. We're pretty much done. And the level just dropped exactly to the full line. I think we can probably drain this back to our pail because there's nothing worse than coolant getting all over the place. And you can see here our line. There's a little arrow right there. And that's our coolant line. So perfect. It's full. We can put the cap on, take this little guy off of the overflow pipe or whatever you want to call that thing. And I think next we're going to do the power electronics. So you can see how this is routed. It comes out of this inverter, and then from there it went down into the actual motor underneath. And it does wind its way from the inverter through this. This is our DC to DC converter. This is actually the alternator in this car. It keeps our 12-volt battery charged. So anyway, we'll go underneath and we'll pull a hose off. We'll do the same shop vac trick on that one. Before we get down there and pull those hoses off, we are going to take this filler cap off just so that we can control the amount of coolant spraying out down there. Talk about tamper-proof. Not even I can figure this out. We'll just pull this right off and we'll head down there. Which one should we do, folks? Probably the one from the surge tank? I don't know. Maybe not. I think we'll do this one. Nope, hose clamp's in a stupid spot. We're gonna do this one. Okay, we're loose, folks. Getting ready to dive out of the way. And control it. We're doing just a little bit of a move here. Holy okay. Woo! That was a good one. Coolant spraying in my eyes. Always wear safety goggles, right? Isn't that what they say? Nice thing about this hose clamp, these spring clamp pliers, is that they lock. There's a ratchet on them, so they lock in the released position, which is amazing. Here is what came out of the car. It's about half the pail, so maybe 3.5 liters or so. It's supposed to hold 3.8. That's close enough for me. Hey, that's pretty scuzzy looking. That's because it's come out of my shop vac. So that's not actually what the coolant looked like when it came out of the car. So let's get the hose back on and vacuum this thing down. Fitting's a bit dirty. Don't want it to leak, do we? Clean. Clamp is still released thanks to my amazing tool. And all you do is squeeze the main thing and pull the trigger and it will release. So we will do that. Yoink. What an excellent tool. I went for years struggling with pliers on these type of spring clamps. I hated spring clamps until I bought those pliers, and then spring clamps became the best thing ever. Okay, we're all vacuumed down again. We're at 25 inches. You can actually take this thing off. You close that valve and you just take your little orifice off, and then it can just sit here like this. We're ready to go, so let's pull some coolant in. This one vacuumed down really quickly because this thing does not hold much coolant. There's only 4 liters as opposed to, or 3.8 liters opposed to 7 point, whatever the battery pack held. We go till it really starts dropping off, and once we're down to about 10 inches, then you can actually just, we know it got everywhere. We know it filled all the voids, the vacuum that we pulled in here, and we can just then pull this off and then top it up if we need to. It's already dropping off pretty good here. I should probably pour more coolant in to keep the level up in my bucket. You can see all the hoses are collapsed under vacuum, and that seems like our vacuum's dropping off like crazy now. We can just go ahead and there we go. We're actually well above our full line on this one now. That can't be good. I might have to pull some out with a syringe. Our last coolant loop is the cabin heater, but as you can see, there's no way to actually access it here. So I'm just gonna remove a few brackets and well, we'll see what happens here, folks. Oh, that was a mistake. Never jam your ratchet under something. This is the power that gets distributed to the actual kettle that heats up the water for the cab. Get a little bit of room. As long as we can get our vacuum filler kind of dead on there, right? All right, that's that. In order to drain this coolant, the lowest point, I showed you the coolant pump for the cabin heater. It's like in a really dumb spot. The clamp isn't even barely accessible with my fancy clamp tool. So what guys do, I'm told, is you remove this quick disconnect from the actual cabin heating module. There we go. That should just slide off, which it's doing. Then what we're gonna do is lean on the shop vac. Having trouble finding enough room here to get the tool in to vacuum this down. So we are going to remove this high voltage wire cable, but don't worry folks, it's not live. 12 volt battery's disconnected. The contactors are open. Heater's not commanded on. Don't worry, there's nothing in there. Besides, I didn't get close to it. It's about 350 volts comes through here once we're cooking, right? Anyway, let's just create a bit of room here. That is perfect. This is only 2 liters, so this should actually go real fast. Kind of had to do that all in one foul swoop. Was not sealing between the tool and the actual expansion tank very well. Seems to be at a very nice full level, but this the coolant one, we can actually run it. We can turn the heater on full blast, make sure that we've purged all the air bubbles out of it. And once again, we're a little bit over full here, which is super easy to fix with a syringe. And that one screws on normally. You don't need a screwdriver to tighten that. That would be silly. Don't know what this bracket does. Literally don't know. Doesn't seem to have any meaningful purpose. Pull our little cappy thing off, and we are set to go. Let's hook the batteries back up. Oh, I'm hearing noises. Let's go spark this thing up and turn the heater on. Oh, I hear coolant rushing noises. Power electronics motor is running. You can see it kind of gurgling right there. Level is still good. Well, that's nice. I didn't think that thing ran at all times. Obviously the battery one is not going. Okay, well, let's jump back in and crank the heater up. And let's see what that's doing. I don't know if I can hear that coolant pump running down there or not, but oh, there we go. All right, so we did burp a little bit out. Should be getting nice and toasty warm right now. So I will need to pull that cap back off. That sucks. Maybe I can use a long weird funnel and some hooky thing to get that cap off, but I'll have to top that up. Looks like our power electronics is still perfect and it's still gurgling some coolant, so that should be fine. The only real question will be after a long drive whether our battery will be okay. Should be all nice and toasty warm in here. Oh yeah, we're getting nice and toasty warm. You can see we're using 7 kilowatts of power just for that heater. One last thing is we'll check for leaks. Doesn't seem like any drippies coming from anywhere, so I think we're good there. I'm gonna get this thing back together, top up the coolant, and then we'll go for a drive. All right, got the car all back together, got the skid plate on. It was all full of rocks and crap. It builds up quite bad on there, so I shook it out. Drove all the way to Oliver and back. Had to get some stuff. That's maybe 15 miles, 20 miles round trip. But the battery coolant loop doesn't turn on. And then I realized, why don't I just fast charge it? So I'm fast charging now. Here we are at fast charging at a DC charger. We'll just whip the hood open and we'll see if it's burped any coolant out. There we go. That is how you get the battery loop going. You fast charge it. Now, if you're at a Chevy dealer, I'm sure you have diagnostic tools that you can just kind of do an override and turn that pump on, but there you have it. That's how you get the batteries to go. Ooh, listen to that fancy Bolt music when I get in. Yeah, unless you're pulling a hill or really working it, it's not going to turn the battery coolant loop on at all. So fast charge it. That's how you do it. So it's low. Gonna have to go home. Gonna have to fill that up. You don't want to have low coolant on one of these cars. An EV, if the coolant sensor senses that the coolant's low, like let's say it was at the bottom of the reservoir, it will shut you down. It literally will not let the car drive. Almost in an unsafe way, like real bad. I've heard stories of Tesla owners doing that. They had a coolant leak and they didn't notice, and suddenly low coolant light came on, bam, car stops, middle of the road, can't even drive it. So anyway, I have to go to the coast here on Wednesday. I'm gonna take this car and I will have a jug of coolant along just in case something happens, like it burps a little more out. But that being said, I think that's it. We'll go top this up and we'll be done. I hope you found this useful or at least mildly entertaining. I will see you next time.